So I've just walked off the street to come and give this interview, and as I'm walking up here, I'm looking at all the folks, and you know what, I see them in their acts of addiction or mental health issues or whatever's brought them down to this environment, and I see a lot of good people who have made a lot of bad choices. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of bad people out there who are predatory in nature, but for those folks who are decent, I see a huge waste of human potential. For example, I was just before coming up here, I was dealing with a guy about 40 years old. He's living in one of the beat up old single room occupancy hotels, and he's in one of the stores, and he's so hungry that he's gone and he's grabbed a loaf of bread and he's just eating the bread. He says, I missed my meals today. I couldn't, and he's obviously got some mental health issues, but so I get talking to him, and the store doesn't want to charge him. They're closing, and they're compassionate, and they understand too, and he's telling me that he's a classically trained cellist. And he says that, you know what, I'm talking. Well, you should be able to, earn some money from that, and get out of this environment. He says, you know what, I used to busk, but nobody knows the songs I know. And he's actually pretty witty. He's nobody knows the songs I know, and says, well, you're not, I'm telling him, you're not playing for them. You're playing for them to hear you, but you're playing for yourself. He says, you know what, people, all they want to do is hear Tiny Bubbles, so they don't listen. Yeah, that's, you're not going to use that, but it's a good story. But there's a lot of people down here who have got there's a lot of people in this environment who are highly intelligent. They've just made bad choices. I know one fella who was a millionaire. He started using coke, and it worked really well with him, and he slid down that road to addiction, and now he's living in one of the SROs. And I know nurses. I know tradespeople. I know people like Cal said who have come from horrible environments, but and I know people who have been traumatized and they haven't developed coping skills to deal with the trauma, and they mask behind those drugs, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or coke or heroin or any of these other drugs, and to make themselves feel better, they go down that road to addiction. And once they become addicted, they haven't dealt with the trauma, but they've also got an addiction. So it's really tough for those people. And the list goes on. Like Cal said, there's peer pressure, curiosity, pleasure, family issues, environmental issues, and the list goes on to why people start. And there's actually a direct correlation between the age of a person starting whatever drug it is, alcohol or pot or any of these other drugs, to the developing brain, and whether they're going to go down that road to addiction. Because a younger person starts engaging in risky behavior, the more likely that they're going to rewire their brain to addiction. So in a nutshell, getting back to the beat, we wanted, for the first season and for the second season, we wanted the public to come to work with us to see the real of the downtown east side from the view of the police, where most people, they watch the 6 o'clock news and they see the yellow tape and they see the spokesperson or they see the fire captain, and those are the spokespeople. Well, with the beat, they go past that tape and they go into the rooming houses and they go onto the street and they become a part of the investigation. They honestly, for the 6 months that the crews are with us on those 2 times, not only did they become a part of our families, but they became a part of they witnessed the investigations, they witnessed the court processes, and they witnessed the successes behind putting people who needed to go to jail in jail. But they also followed us dealing with victims and witnesses, and they saw the stark reality of the violent nature of an environment like this. So if you want to come to work with me and Cal and the other guys on the beat, the first season's on YouTube. I think you type in VPD The Beat, watch all 10 parts, and I think Gala Films is they've partnered with City TV, and I think it's still on City TV. So it's like I said, we're the VPD and Odd Squad. We just cooperated with Gala Films, and Gala Films, it's their product. So
Cool. Yeah, definitely. We'll check it out. I'm excited. So, Cal, on a final note, this endeavor, this job, it's probably pretty emotionally taxing because you're like the visuals that you see. Are there the resources for you guys to, in case you guys get very upset and like get stressed out and stuff?
Crisis intervention team, which is known as the critical incident team. So anytime that we witness or experience something exceptionally traumatic, they're there for us. And we also have full access to a police-appointed psychologist who's available for us 24/7 should we require their services. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is the nature of the beast. Everybody that became a police officer understood that they'd be witnessing things, they'd be experiencing things, which would put them essentially in a position where it would be exceptionally taxing, not only physiologically, but mentally, spiritually, and it would essentially be pushing us to our limitations in terms of what we're capable of coping with. And so I understood all that when I got in. And 15 years later, I can assure you I've seen my fair share of things on the street, which obviously I prefer not to allude to or think about, even for that matter. I mean, you essentially what you do is you press it into the deepest recesses of your memory and not think about it again. Because I was told something when I first got on the job. They said emotions are like a bag that you carry around. And if you continue to throw more emotions into that bag, it's going to get heavy. And eventually there's going to come a point where you're not going to be able to carry that bag. And metaphorically speaking, that's very true. Where you essentially want to be in a position where you use your friend, family support network, or your sense of spirituality, or for that matter, any type of physical endeavors that you pursue. Use that as coping mechanisms to adequately deal with everything that you experience. And in the show, you're going to see all this. In one specific episode, where we were dealing with a distraught female who was experiencing depression, but to the point where she developed suicidal tendencies, and we were trying to negotiate her down from a building. Unfortunately, despite all the negotiations, she did jump to her death. And so Sergeant Mark Steinkamp was there, as was I, and we experienced and saw this firsthand. But we're still here today to talk about it, is because, unfortunate as it is to say, we've seen this on more than one occasion. And however, I'd like to personally believe that I've developed enough coping mechanisms that I can deal with it adequately and just move on from the experience.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chit-chat with us today and being a part of the solution. So thank you guys for what you're doing. You guys are definitely going to make this place a better place, one step at a time.
Well, Kevin, that's exactly it. We are part of a team, and all of us contribute in our own way. And at the end of the day, we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. But the point being is that every single day we come into work, we put on our uniforms, and we get out there on the street and walk the beat because we have this resolve and conviction that we want to make a difference in the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Constable Cal DeSange with the Vancouver Police Department on the beat enforcement team. Another day in patrol in the downtown east side. So essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to take you into our general geographical area, the area that we police. Normally we're walking the beat, but for your safety and courtesy, I'm going to be taking you guys around in a police car and showing you all the problems that we face. So case in point, I mean, you're going to see drug dealers standing at various corners, and the first question that might pop to your head is, why aren't we immediately arresting them? Well, there's a little something that you need called evidence. So unfortunately, at this moment in time, we don't have the immediate resources that we can deploy to focusing on every single drug dealer standing at every single corner. We'll essentially implement projects on a case-by-case basis, where we'll be dealing with specific individuals, primarily the ones that are most predatory or violent in nature. So first things first, before I get started, I'm just going to review our computer, see what our call load is like, and based on that, we'll be responding accordingly. So when I first arrived in the downtown east side, I was well aware a couple of problems that we're going to be facing with on a large-scale basis is going to be obviously the open-air drug market and individuals with mental health issues down here. These two components of the variable form essentially the majority of the case basis that we have to deal with. And that's also part of the mandate of the beat team, is to deal with the open-air drug market in terms of providing visible presence on the streets, and also dealing with all the violent criminal activity that you're seeing down here. But part of that also entails dealing with individuals with mental health issues, because these individuals are more susceptible to becoming addicted to the drugs because they lack the mental faculties to understand what they're getting themselves into. Most of the violent encounters that we've had has been with individuals that have suffered from schizophrenia or some form of mental health issue. Their condition has been aggravated and exacerbated by the use of drugs, so they become more violent. So this individual in the wheelchair that you see, I've known him for over 5 years. He was, as a result of his deteriorating mental health, he was becoming a significant problem down here, where he was engaging in more and more acts of violence and more incidents, becoming involved with police. So eventually he became a primary target for mental health teams, and they ended up shipping him off to mental health institutions for the last couple of years. He just came out 2 days ago, and now obviously it's almost 11 p.m. and he's back out on the street, and you'll find him like this at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, where he'll be out rolling around. So that's just one component of what we deal with. And let's take a drive and look at what else we do. When Mark Rennie's team came in, their marketing development crew, they looked at the Woodwards building as a huge marketing potential, because by changing this building and by redeveloping it, it would give the downtown east side an entire facelift, thereby in essence rejuvenating the area. It has done exactly that. Personally, I think it was a bit optimistic for them to think that it would have the significant change, which they initially believed that it would. However, it has resulted in change. It is a more gradual, incremental change, and it is happening on a day-by-day basis, where you're seeing more individuals come down here, move into these buildings, who normally would have never considered the downtown east side home. What that, in essence, has done, it has essentially created various different demographics in the area and gentrified it. So now we're seeing different people from different classes, different working backgrounds, coming into this area and changing its face. So the downtown east side, as we knew it, as this drug-infested area, it's becoming more condensed, smaller, and versus where it was a lot larger problem in the past.